Leo, let me speak to you directly because you're standing on the edge of something massive. And just before you leap, the divine is calling out to you. Not to run away, but to stop. And listen. This isn't a warning out of fear. It's an invitation. A pause. A sacred silence in the middle of the storm. You may not see it yet, but you are walking into something bigger than you ever imagined. A new timeline. A shift in your identity. A redirection of your destiny. But the way forward isn't about doing more, pushing harder, or proving your worth. It's about recognizing the pull of the spirit before you get too far down a road you weren't meant to travel. Some of you have been chasing a feeling. Or maybe a person. Or a dream that once lit you up but now feels hollow, heavy, or confusing. And now, everything feels off. Something is falling apart. Or maybe it's you. But I'm here to tell you, it's not failure. It's divine positioning. You're not being punished, Leo. You're being paused. And there's a difference. When the universe redirects you, it often comes dressed as delay, doubt, or disappointment. But underneath it is divine protection. What you think you're losing is nothing compared to what's being prepared for you behind the scenes. I know that as a Leo, your heart is big. You love hard. You move fast. You pour your energy into people, projects, and plans with everything you've got. And that's what makes you magnetic. But right now, that same fire could burn you out if it's directed at the wrong goal, the wrong relationship, the wrong identity. So this message isn't just about stopping. It's about waking up. It's about understanding that not all movement is progress, and not every opportunity is meant for your soul. Some doors are flashy distractions. Some voices echo your fears, not your truth. And some paths feel exciting only because they validate your wounds, not your healing. You don't need to earn what's already yours. What's meant for you doesn't demand your suffering. It requires your alignment. So if things have been feeling strange, if people you once trusted are acting differently, if you've been feeling pushed to act out of urgency, fear, or scarcity, take this as your cue to breathe. Pull your energy back. And ask yourself, is this aligned with who I'm becoming? Because the truth is eerie, not falling apart. You're falling into something bigger. And before you step through that next door, God is begging you to stop and make sure it's the one your soul asked for. Not the one your wounds settled for. Don't be afraid to pause. Don't be afraid to let go. Sometimes the silence between decisions is where your next miracle begins. If any part of this message hit home for you, take a moment. Comment below, I'm choosing alignment over urgency. I trust the pause is part of the plan. I'm ready to stop and listen. You never know who might need to read your words. This is your moment, Leo. Don't rush past it. Let's move through this together. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That strange, magnetic pull towards something that seems larger than life, an opportunity, a decision, a shift that almost commands your surrender. It's not just in your head. Right now, the celestial sky is aligning in a way that hasn't happened in decades. With Jupiter amplifying everything it touches, Neptune blurring the lines between illusion and truth, and the black moon Lilith stirring the unseen parts of your psyche, Leo, you are being drawn into what I call a destiny vortex. It's that precise moment when the river of life moves faster than your paddle, and all you can do is choose to float or be consumed by the current. You see, this isn't chaos. It's choreography. But here's what most people won't tell you: not every pull from the universe is an invitation to say yes. Sometimes, the most divine act isn't to charge ahead with courage, but to pause with wisdom. To stop not out of fear, but out of reverence for what's truly unfolding beneath the surface. Imagine an eagle, wings fully extended, riding a thermal current. It's not flapping frantically. It's still. It trusts. Because the sky knows how to lift what is ready to be lifted. Right now, Leo, you are that eagle. But the energy coursing through your life is not asking for action. It's asking for awareness. You're at the crossroads of spiritual momentum and karmic weight, and you might feel like you're being swept away by something you didn't sign up for. That's not a mistake. That pressure you feel? It's the echo of unresolved choices, untamed desires, ancestral patterns, and dreams you tried to bury but couldn't. And they're all rising now, not to trap you, but to show you something vital, that you don't have to carry everything forward. In these moments, we are reminded of the sacred law of non-doing. That sometimes, the greatest strength is not in forging ahead, but in stepping back. Just like a bell cannot be rung without stillness first, your soul cannot receive its next message if you're caught in constant motion. There's a reason divine whispers are only heard in silence. That uncomfortable pause you're resisting? It might be your soul's way of creating space for something far more aligned than what you're chasing. Even in timeless teachings, there's a saying: when the mind stops grasping, true clarity reveals itself. It's not surrender as defeat, it's surrender as transformation. A letting go that births a seeing. So if you felt like you're on the edge of something massive, but also strangely unsure, listen to that hesitation. It may not be resistance. It may be protection. Because sometimes, even blessings can come too early if we're not energetically ready to receive them. This is not about fear. This is about precision. Timing. Trusting that the universe is not just throwing opportunities at you, it's sculpting you to become someone who can hold the weight of what's meant for you without breaking. You're not behind. You're being carved. Honed. Refined. So what do you do now? Nothing yet, everything. You breathe deeper. You observe the thoughts without attaching. You allow the wave to pass, knowing that what is meant will never miss you. And more importantly, what is not meant will never stick, no matter how hard you try to hold on. You are not losing your path, Leo. You're learning to trust it in silence. And if all of this feels too abstract, ask yourself gently, what if the thing I'm chasing is not the reward, but the test? What if pausing is how I pass it? And what if, just maybe, heaven is not asking you to run but to be still enough to finally hear your name being called? For something even greater? Let the stillness hold you. Let the silence guide you. Let this sacred pause recalibrate your truth. You've been praised all your life for being a fighter. For rising after every fall. For proving the world wrong with your strength, your fire, and your refusal to surrender. That's the signature of a true Leo. A lion doesn't retreat. A lion conquers. But what if? This time, victory doesn't come from pushing harder but from surrendering deeper? There are seasons in life when our usual way of operating, controlling, fixing, leading, solving becomes the very thing that delays the breakthrough we're craving. And right now, dear Leo, you're not being asked to draw your sword. You're being asked to drop it. The energy moving through your chart now, especially as Mars and Mercury interact with your 12th house, isn't inviting a fight. It's inviting a shift. From, I must do everything myself, to, let me receive what's already meant for me. That's not weakness. That's sacred intelligence. That's inner mastery. Think of the image of a river. When a boulder crashes into its path, the river doesn't force its way through. It pauses, redirects, finds a softer path. It still reaches the ocean, just with more grace, less suffering. That's exactly what the Hanged Man tarot archetype wants to teach you now. It's not punishment. It's not stagnation. It's revelation. Being suspended upside down is a way of seeing life from the perspective you've never dared to try. When your world is flipped, what used to look like threats now look like mirrors. What once felt like delays now feel like divine protection. Sometimes, the biggest power is in not reacting. You've carried so much on your back: decisions, expectations, survival instincts. And yet, life is not asking you to fight anymore. It's asking you to listen. To surrender to a greater rhythm. That may sound simple. But for someone whose entire identity has been built on showing up strong, surrender can feel like defeat. But what if this was the very moment your higher life begins? There is deep, quiet wisdom in pausing. In observing your resistance instead of rushing to solve it. Healing doesn't come from burning more energy, it comes from allowing space. From being brave enough to not know for a while. Even ancient philosophies teach us that true liberation doesn't arise from effort, it arises from stillness. From emptying. From watching the storm without jumping into it. You don't need to burn through every emotion to be transformed by it. Sometimes you just need to sit with it, breathe through it, and let it reshape you from the inside. I know you may feel like if you stop moving, everything will fall apart. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if this pause is the portal through which all your answers arrive? So let me gently ask you this: what have you been fighting against lately? And what would happen if, just for today, you stopped resisting and started listening? This isn't about giving up. It's about giving over. Your roar is powerful. But your silence, when chosen wisely, is transcendent. Let it guide you to what your strength alone cannot reach. Leave your reflection below. What have you been resisting that may now be calling you to let go? This is your moment to shift from warrior to wise guide. You're not losing control, you're gaining connection. And that changes everything. When everything feels like it's slipping out of your hands, when the ground beneath your feet no longer offers certainty, and when your logical mind can't seem to piece together why life feels like a free fall, that's often the exact moment something greater is unfolding. Not against you, but for you. You're not failing. You're not broken. You're not lost. You're falling into something your current self couldn't have orchestrated, because it's not just your mind's creation, it's your soul's alignment. This isn't the chaos of collapse, it's the current of redirection. The sensation of falling is only terrifying when we forget that something larger than us might be catching us. And maybe, just maybe, it's not even catching, but carrying. Like a river carrying a leaf to the sea, not because the leaf chose the sea, but because the sea has always been its destination. The free fall you're experiencing may very well be the most sacred act of surrender your soul has ever been invited into. Take Joseph, thrown into a pit by his own brothers. In that moment, everything looked like betrayal, abandonment, injustice. But the pit was not the punishment, it was the passage. It was the positioning. And through that descent, Joseph rose into a place of unshakable purpose. Or think of Esther, who didn't plan for power, but was called into it for such a time as this. Her ascent came not from striving, but from being chosen in the very moment her presence mattered most. What if the same is true for you? When you're falling into something big, it often doesn't look like greatness. It looks like loss of control. Like plans unraveling. Like silence where you expected answers. But spiritual law, the law of alignment, says, you are not drifting. You are being placed. And that placement is not random. It's sacred geometry at work. The law of attraction doesn't always show up as what you want, it begins with where you're needed. And sometimes, being needed requires being moved. If you've been seeing the number 7 often, know this: 7 is the number of spiritual restructuring. It tears down illusions and resets foundations. It brings solitude, contemplation, and the deep realignment of your energetic blueprint. And the number 8? It signals an incoming harvest, material abundance, karmic resolution, and the energy of infinite flow. When both appear frequently, they are not coincidences. They're coordinates. A quiet confirmation that your current fall is actually the descent of a seed. Just before it breaks through the soil. In moments like this, don't force clarity. Instead, lean into the trust that what looks like an ending may be the start of the role your soul agreed to long before you ever understood it. If it's hard to breathe right now, if you're watching everything shift faster than you can process, try this: grab a journal, and gently write down 3 things in your life that currently feel out of your control. Don't judge them. Don't fix them. Just name them. And then, out loud, perhaps with a hand on your heart, say this simple truth: I trust that the universe is placing me exactly where I need to be. That act alone is a sacred declaration. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's a bold, conscious choice to surrender to divine movement, knowing that surrender isn't giving up, it's growing deeper. What if the thing you fear falling into is the very place your soul has been trying to get you all along? Pause for a moment and feel into that. Breathe it in. Let it settle. And if your heart says yes, if something inside you stirs even slightly, then don't resist. Instead, ask yourself gently, am I willing to be placed, even if I don't yet understand the purpose? Because maybe this fall isn't the end. Maybe it's the becoming. You've come so far, Leo. And right now, it feels like you're on the edge of something massive, like the universe is dangling a miracle in front of you, so close you can almost taste it. A promotion. A breakthrough. A flood of abundance. A powerful love. Whatever it is, it's real. But here's the secret no one tells you: the more you chase it, the more it slips away. Like trying to grab water with clenched fists. What wants to come to you needs space to land. And when you run after it with desperation, you block the very flow that's been making its way toward you all along. This is not about giving up. This is about shifting. Receiving instead of pursuing. Trusting instead of controlling. Gratitude instead of grasping. Right now, Leo, your energy is radiant. The Empress card is walking beside you, soft, abundant, and unshakably powerful. She reminds you that true prosperity blooms in open hands and open hearts. She doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't demand, she invites. This is your cue to stop sprinting and start standing still. In your worth. And God is whispering something important right now. My child, you're not meant to fight for what's already yours. When you force outcomes, you're telling the universe you don't trust its timing. When you grip too tightly, you're telling money it's not safe to come near you unless you're in control. But wealth, love, divine opportunity, they come like the wind, when you're still enough to feel them. When your heart is tuned to receive. When your soul believes it deserves good things. Just because. Imagine this, your life is a garden. You've planted seeds with every effort, every prayer, every sleepless night. But now is not the time to dig up the soil and demand results. It's time to water with intention, bask in the sun of trust, and let nature do her work. You don't scream at a flower to bloom, you wait, with quiet faith, knowing the beauty is inevitable. Just like your blessing. Just like the unexpected gift making its way to you now. This is the week to stop the hustle, not in laziness, but in confidence. To let money become your partner, not your prisoner. To welcome the new job, the client, the love, the opportunity. With ease. Speak to your finances with softness. Let your energy say, you are welcome here. You serve a purpose, but you do not define me. The color of the week, burnt gold with a glimmer of orangeous, no coincidence. It symbolizes awakening, sacred expansion, and illuminated prosperity. It's the shade of wisdom earned through fire. It's not just about flashy wealth, it's about divine readiness. You're not just making money, you're becoming the kind of person who can hold it, manage it, and multiply it with love. Let that be your magnet. And when fear creeps in, when you're tempted to push, to control, to grip, come back to your breath. Say it out loud if you need to, money comes to me like my breath, natural, gentle, consistent. That's not just a mantra, that's a rewiring. That's you reclaiming your space as a receiver, not a chaser. So this is the sacred paradox, Leo, let go. To receive. Stop chasing. To be chosen. Don't confuse urgency with alignment. And don't confuse action with panic. There's a difference between showing up and showing off your desperation to the universe. The former opens doors. The latter keeps them closed. Let this week be your reset. Reclaim your grace. Lead with presence. And let the right people, opportunities, and blessings arrive, not because you begged for them, but because you finally stood still long enough to let them find you. There's a moment in every seeker's path when the universe doesn't ask for more effort, more answers, or more striving, but simply asks for stillness. And perhaps, dear Leo, this is that moment. You may think you're chasing after something big, a career move, a financial breakthrough, a life-altering connection, but what if, in reality, something even greater is trying to catch you? But it can't reach you if you're always running. What if the answer isn't forward but inward? You see, stopping isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's not failure, it's returning. You're not giving up on the journey, you're stepping off the noisy train of expectations, and walking the sacred, quiet path home. And in that pause, something holy happens. The breath deepens. The thoughts soften. The heart begins to whisper. And in that whisper, the voice of the divine becomes clear. It's not shouting. It never does. It's waiting for you in the silence. What if you trusted that stillness is not stagnation, but strategy? Like a kite flying higher, not by pulling harder but by surrendering to the wind. That's you now. You don't need to force alignment. The universe doesn't reward burnout. It blesses awareness. And awareness only comes when we stop. So today, I ask you not to chase one more task, not to search for one more sign, not to force one more outcome, but instead, do something radical. Stop. Stop for 1 hour. Turn off your phone. Turn off the noise. And turn toward yourself. What are you really feeling beneath it all? Not what you should feel. What you are feeling. Write it down. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? Not, what do I want, or, what do others expect, but, what is my soul quietly longing for? That's your compass now. Let that guide you. And if you choose to pray, don't do it to plead for change. Do it to honor what already is. Prayer isn't always a request. Sometimes, it's the deepest form of gratitude. Like saying, thank you, even when I don't yet understand. Thank you, even in the waiting. Thank you, because I know you are working even when I am resting. There's a quiet mantra that's been passed down through many spiritual traditions, not as dogma, but as deep truth. I pause, so God can move. I am silent, so He may speak. I lower myself, so He may be lifted. Can you feel the power in that? It's not about submission, it's about alignment. It's about making space for the divine order to unfold without your constant interference. You don't have to carry the whole world. You're not meant to. Sometimes the greatest strength is to surrender, to unclench, to say, I don't need to control this moment. I trust the process is sacred. That's what this moment is asking of you. That's what stop really means, not failure, but sacred pause. Right now, in this sacred pause, your nervous system softens. Your spirit exhales. Your soul realigns. And in that space, something miraculous begins to take shape, not because you did something, but because you allowed it. So if you feel called, write in the comments, what action will you take to stop today? Will you close your eyes and take 5 slow breaths? Will you wash your hands like a ritual? Will you write a single sentence of gratitude? Whatever it is, anchor it. Claim it. That is your first step toward returning home. And remember, this isn't the end of the journey. It's the part where everything begins to make sense. Leo, you are not falling. You are being lifted. It may feel like you're losing your footing, but what's actually happening is that heaven is rearranging the ground beneath you so that you land exactly where you were meant to rise. What if that uneasy feeling in your chest isn't fear, but the spiritual tension of transformation? What if this overwhelming moment is not punishment but preparation? You haven't been abandoned. You've been chosen. And that means you're being refined, not rejected. Yes, the road ahead may look unfamiliar. Yes, you may be tempted to keep running into that big thing you thought you wanted. But what if God is whispering, "Pause, child. Not this door. Not yet." Will you have the courage to stop and listen? Will you trust that the detour is actually divine redirection? Sometimes, the loudest miracles begin in the quietest decisions. And the most powerful breakthroughs happen not when we chase the world, but when we choose stillness long enough to hear God speak. So I ask you, dear Leo, can you sit in silence long enough to hear what your soul is trying to say? Can you let go of the thing you're clinging to in order to receive the bigger blessing that's trying to find you? You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are not behind. You are being calibrated for divine timing. So don't rush forward. Don't panic. Don't chase what is no longer aligned. Instead, return to the truth. You are the one who was called by name. You are the one who was seen even when you felt invisible. You are the one whose spirit carries a mission too sacred to be rushed. Let the silence be your sanctuary. Let this pause be your power. And know this: God doesn't stop you to harm you. He pauses you to protect you. Because what's ahead is even bigger than what you're reaching for. So now I lovingly ask, will you type 888 in the comments to declare that you're open to divine redirection? Will you like and subscribe to this message so that others may find their stillness too? And will you let eternal mindfulness continue walking beside you on this awakening journey? Thank you for staying with me until the very end. May you walk in peace, rise in grace, and trust the voice that whispers, "Wait here, my child. Something holy is coming." You are not falling. You're being called higher.